Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another monthly reading wrap-up video. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I managed to read in September, and September was such an amazing reading month for me. I know I say this maybe nearly every month, but this month was the best reading month that I've had all year. I've managed to read a total of 9 books. There are still, I believe, 2 more days left in September. I'm filming this on the Friday. Hopefully you'll see this on the Saturday, but I know myself well and I know I won't be able to finish any more books in that time, so I'm just filming this wrap up now because there is no point delaying it because I'm just not going to read any more books in that time. So without further ado, let's get on with the books that I read in September. So the first book that I read in September was Renegades by Marissa Meyer, and I do believe that this was on my TBR for the year. Now every year I come up with, I think, 5 books that are on my physical TBR that I have to read by the end of the year, and mainly it's to kind of whittle down the books that I do have. I don't have that many TBR books anymore. I went through and did a massive unhaul, I think like 2 years ago, and I left myself with just a couple left. I think I probably, if I'm estimating it, I think I definitely have under 30. So I don't have that many books to read, but I feel like if I just read a couple, you know, during the year, then I should be able to get through that list. Anyway, Marissa Meyer was one of my favourite YA authors. I loved the Lunar Chronicles series, and then I read Heartless like 2 years ago and I really didn't like it, and honestly I lost faith in Marissa Meyer's writing. I read Renegades this month and honestly it reignited my love for her books again and her just storytelling and her writing. So this is a YA sci-fi dystopian-y fantasy type book, and it basically follows this girl named Nova, and she lives in a world where there are kind of like 2 sides. So you have the anarchists and then you have the renegades. Now there are people in this world who are basically called prodigies, and these prodigies have superpowers. So the kind of superpowers that they have are, one will have the power to kind of like wield a bomb out of, you know, nowhere. Nova herself can put people to sleep, and you also have a boy named Adrian, and his power is that he can draw things and bring them to life. So those are the kind of like superhero powers that we're dealing with, and in this world the renegades are kind of like the good superheroes, and then you have the anarchists who are like the evil ones, and the renegades are trying to stop the anarchists, and they're also trying to stop kind of like people from doing bad things. Years and years beforehand in this world there was a war that broke out between the anarchists and the renegades, and essentially it saw the anarchists overthrown and the renegades took power. And Nova is an anarchist and you have Adrian who is a renegade, and both are on opposing sides. However, Nova finds herself amidst all of the renegades, and essentially in this book there is a common villain that Nova and Adrian end up having to go against, and Nova's whole mission during this book is to kind of infiltrate the renegades and kind of like learn about them and who they are and what they're doing to eventually bring them down, because obviously she's an anarchist and she wants the anarchists back in power. She wants freedom for everyone. I loved this. I absolutely loved the storytelling. It was super fun and super fast paced, and honestly it was exactly what I always expect from Marissa Meyer's writing, and I do believe if I went back and I read the Lunar Chronicles I would still really deeply love it. And I expected the same from Heartless and I just never got it. And so I held off from reading this book for so long because I honestly thought I would read it and I would hate it, and I didn't. I actually ended up giving this one 4 stars, and I feel like the only reason that I took a star off is because of the fact that I kind of feel like I knew who the villain was going to be and where it was kind of going, and so I'm kind of hoping that the next book is a little bit more unexpected. I did really enjoy kind of like the inner turmoil that Nova had, because obviously she's dealing with being an anarchist, being in a world full of renegades, and she's thrown in amidst all of them and she's living in their world and kind of like dealing with that, and then she's having this inner turmoil of like, oh, I don't know which side I stand on anymore. And I feel like in this book both sides are very wrong, and I love the fact that it's kind of written in that way so that you kind of see the wrong on both sides. I also wasn't really super into the romance in this book. There's kind of like a little romance that starts kindling with Nova and Adrian, which is kind of obvious. I feel like it happens in every YA book. It was cute, it was okay, but like I was here more for the action. I really enjoyed the action, super fast paced, absolutely loved it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, so I'm really excited to carry on with this trilogy, and it's definitely one that I'm not going to be DNFing, because the whole idea of my yearly TBR is to kind kind of like, if I've got a series, is to read the first book, and if I don't like the first book, then I just get rid of the series. And this is one that I'm definitely going to continue on with. So the next two books I'm going to mention consecutively because they are both a part of the same trilogy, and that is It's Not Summer Without You and We'll Always Have Summer, both by Jenny Han. These are a part of the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy, and these are the last two books as well. Now, It's Not Summer Without You, I rated 4 stars. I absolutely love this book. I went into this expecting happy girl, you know, fun summer. I came out sad, depressed, girl summer, and I was not expecting it. I was so upset reading this book. I wasn't crying like ugly tears, but like it made me very teary, and it's been a long time, I think, since a book has made me cry. The last one that I can think of is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, but oh my god, I was so upset reading this. The vibes were immaculate. It still gave me that like summer feeling, and I feel like this one did it really well because you almost had that very reminiscent summer feeling, whereas in the first one was taking place all at the beach house, so you got that real, you know, fun summer vibe, whereas this one was like you're reminiscing for something that you really want, and I feel like Jenny Han did that well. And something that she does really well is she manages to kind of put flashbacks throughout the book, and I never really felt like I was thrown off at any point, and she just did the time jumping incredibly well, and I really enjoyed it. Now, We'll Always Have Summer was a very big disappointment for me. I ended up rating that one 3 stars, and honestly I almost rated it 2 stars. It did not have the same vibe for me, and for me it doesn't necessarily matter if the book doesn't take place mainly at the beach house. The main reason why I didn't like this book was I hated the plot. And I honestly felt like one of the characters, and I won't mention who because it will probably spoil it, but one of the characters was completely thrown under the bus, and I felt like their character was purposefully made bad so that Belly could have the ending that she got. And I don't necessarily feel like you have to make a character look bad to do that, and it didn't match with the way that they were in the last 2 books, and it really bothered me. Like, I didn't care who Belly ended up with, but at the same time you don't have to throw the characters under the bus and like completely change their character out of nowhere. It just really bothered me, and it just didn't match the last 2 books. It kind of made this last book feel very disconnected, which I didn't like. Overall, really enjoyed and loved the trilogy. It's super fast paced. If you're looking for a really good light-hearted, I say light-hearted, maybe not light-hearted, but if you're looking for a really fun, very summer feeling book for either you're going into summer, because obviously I know part of the hemisphere is just going into summer, or you're looking for a book next summer, I would definitely recommend this trilogy, and I enjoyed it. Just the last book was a massive letdown for me. So the 4th book that I managed to read in September was Fractured by Karen Slaughter. This is the 2nd book in the Will Trent series by Karen Slaughter. I read the Grant County series last year, and this is almost, I wouldn't say a continuation of Grant County, but some of the Grant County characters are mentioned, and I'm not at that part yet, but I'm hoping to get to that part soon. I really enjoyed the first book, and I have to say I really enjoyed this book as well. I gave this one a 4 star, and actually I feel like I preferred this one more to the first one, because the first one was, for me, kind of obvious where it was going. I kind of guessed who the criminal was and who like murdered the person that was murdered in the book. However, this one had me continually guessing who the murderer was, which I really liked because I love it when the book keeps me on my toes. I've also found so far with the Will Trent series that I really just enjoy these characters way more than the Grant County series. I felt like the Grant County series, the characters were highly unlikable. In this series, oh my god, Will Trent is such a little, like, oh my god, he must be protected at all costs. He's like a little fluffy puppy, and I want to wrap him in bubble wrap because he is so precious. I love him. I'm rooting for him. I am hoping, okay, one of the things that I love about these Karen Slaughter series so far, and you had this in the Grant County series as well, is you get kind of a good mix of, I guess, detective work and like murders and all of that dark, grim stuff, but I also love these sideline kind of storylines where you get, you know, to see these kind of friendships and, you know, romantic relationships blossom, and you're really kind of like rooting for certain characters to be together or to be friends or for things to work out, and I love that about this series. I'm rooting for Will I'm hoping for the best. I also really liked the introduction of a character named Faith in this book. It kind of starts out where you kind of don't really know how to feel about her. I wouldn't say you hate her, because there is a character in the Grant County series that I absolutely cannot stand, and I couldn't stand her from the beginning. However, Faith is one of those characters where it's like, you can see why you should hate her, but also you feel like you could vibe along with her. And I really can't wait to see how her storyline develops, because I've heard things get a lot deeper with her, and I can't wait to see where that goes. But overall, I'm absolutely loving the Will Trent series. I definitely rate it over the Grant County series, and I just can't wait to explore more of these characters and more of this little world that Karen Slaughter has written about. So the 5th book that I read in September was, I believe, oh no, this was my 2nd book that I read on holiday, because I actually read Fractured when I was in Turkey, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. Now, this was my first Emily Henry book, and I was super excited going in, because obviously I know people absolutely love her books, and she predominantly writes adult romances, and I'm quite into the romance genre now. I have read quite a few romances. I feel like I know what I like and what I don't like, and I did really enjoy this book. I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I didn't feel like I loved it as much as I wanted to love it, but I did enjoy it enough to the point where I will read on with her other books, because I did actually really like her writing style. The one thing that I will say is that, and I don't know whether this is a me thing, but this book didn't overly feel like a romance to me. Although you're kind of having that kind of romantic storyline, I feel like this book was a lot deeper than that. You have January, who is the main character, and she is dealing with a loss that she has gone through recently, and she's also dealing with this idea that the person that she lost, she didn't really know them. And I feel like this book did a lot more exploring of that, and also the exploration of kind of January's feelings and thoughts and all of that, more than it was exploring the romantic storyline that was going on. So for me, this didn't really overly feel like a heavily romance read, which was kind of what I was expecting. So maybe that's a me thing, I'm not sure, but I feel like that was the reason that I rated this down quite a bit. Having said that, I really did enjoy the romance between Gus and January. I really enjoyed their banter, which is something that I always look for in a romance read. If they've got witty banter, I am there. 5 stars, I love that. Now, I can't remember exactly what I meant when I wrote this, but I did write down on my kind of like little review thingies a few repetitive phrases / descriptions, and I don't know what they were, but like that's something that I usually pick up on that annoys me, so obviously it annoyed me enough to write it down, and probably that's why I rated it down as well. I did say that I loved the snippets that we've got of January's stories. I've just realised I haven't even said what the book is about, so this follows January, who is a best-selling romance author, and then you also have Gus, who is, I guess, writes the complete opposite, so he's not afraid to kill off his characters and stuff like that. And January, as I said, is obviously dealing with a loss, and she is also in kind of like a writing slump, you know, she's kind of like hit a roadblock as far as her writing goes. So she teams up with Gus eventually, and what they do is they swap genres. So she writes the way that Gus would, and Gus writes the way that she would. So Gus is trying to write a happy ending, while she is trying to write kind of a more miserable ending, and that is the story. And I really enjoyed the snippets of January's story that we got. I just really enjoy it when you have kind of like a book or a story within a story. I just enjoy seeing that. I think it's really cleverly done, and I loved it in this book. It was very entertaining. But other than that, I found the writing to have this really nice easy flow, and it was really fast paced, and I will definitely be reading another Emily Henry book soon. I just maybe will have to leave them for next summer, because that part of the season is over and I need summer to read a summer book. So the 6th book that I read in September was Convenience Store Woman by, and please do not judge my pronunciation, usually I look up online before I do these videos, but I haven't had time this time, but it is by Sayaka Murata. I'm hoping that I have said that right, but this is a short story. I believe it's like under 200 pages. As far as I can remember, I believe that this is set in Japan. The author is Japanese, so I'm pretty sure it's Japan. I'm getting confused because I read another one this month that I think it takes place in Korea, but this one's Japan. And it basically follows this woman who works in a convenience store, and the book doesn't exactly tell you, but you do kind of get the idea that she is autistic or like on the spectrum in some way. And it follows her as she kind of like goes through life working at this convenience store and trying to figure out life whilst everyone judges her for not having the life that they have. So she's kind of trying to fit in this world that doesn't really mould to her kind of view. She has all of her friends that are basically being like, why aren't you married? Why haven't you got a stable job? You know, all of these things are being thrown at her and she doesn't really feel like she fits in, and so you follow her in her day-to-day life as she is trying to mould herself into this world that doesn't really fit around her. I thought the concept for this one was really interesting. It just fell very flat for me. Quite honestly, I don't really understand what the point of this book is. I did quite like seeing the main character's viewpoint because obviously I'm not on the spectrum, so I don't really know how people deal with their day-to-day lives or like how they view the world. So it was interesting to see that from this character. But other than that, this book was really boring. And it kind of like took a turn at the end and I was just like, what is going on right now? Like, in what world? In what world? I don't really have much to say about this one. It's really short. I just didn't really get the point of it at all. I think I missed the point of this book. It was okay. Honestly, I was glad when it was over. I found it really boring and I hate to say this, but I gave it 1 star. So the 7th book that I read in September was Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. This was Ali Hazelwood's 2nd ever release, I believe. And once again, this is a woman in STEM romance. So this follows a young woman named Bee who gets the opportunity to work at NASA. However, the catch is that she will be having to work with her arch nemesis named Levi, who absolutely hated her when she worked with him before at, I think, university, college, whatever you want to call it, and she will have to work with him again, and so things ensue from there. If you've read The Love Hypothesis, you get the drill. It's kind of the same thing except in a different work environment. So I did really enjoy this one. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't love it as much as The Love Hypothesis. There were a couple of things that really annoyed me, and the first thing that I'm going to mention is there are trademarked phrases in this book. So like, I don't know if I can explain this. So you know how like we'll say like mansplaining? So for instance, if Ali Hazelwood put the word mansplaining in this book, she'd put like a little trademark symbol above it, and she did it constantly and it was very, very annoying and irritating, and honestly it took me out of the book so much. Once or twice it's funny, but the whole way through the book is so unnecessary. The other thing that I really found annoying about this book is Bee constantly turning around to Levi and being like, oh, you hate me, it must be so awful to work with me and all of that. But she kept mentioning the fact that he hated her, but she would never let him chime in and be like, hey, that's actually not how I feel. So I found that really frustrating because even after he had turned around to her and said, oh, I don't hate you, she'd be like, oh no, you hate me. And it was so irritating. I also feel like certain plot points should have been really obvious to the characters, and maybe this is like a reader's point of view where I'm like, oh my god, it was so obvious at the time. But like, things were very, very obvious and being kind of thrown at these characters and they just weren't picking up on it, and it really bugged me because when it actually came to the final reveal, it was like, oh my god, I can't believe I didn't see that. Honey, it was right there in front of you. But overall, it was entertaining. It was a light, fluffy read, which was all I really needed after all of the dark stuff that I read. And it was 3 stars. It was okay. Will I read on with Ali Hazelwood? Yes, but I think I'll lower my expectations next time. I love it when my camera stops recording and then I don't know where I left off. So I'm just going to go on and talk about my 8th book that I read in September because I don't know where the last point left off. So the 8th book that I read in September was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. This is an adult psychological thriller and it follows this woman who is taken on to be a housemaid at a very wealthy household, and she recently got out of prison and this household has secrets, and that's all I'm going to say about this book. I loved this so much. I loved it so much that when I was reading it I was like, oh my god, and like my friend was next to me and I knew that she had bought this book and I think like maybe 1 or 2 others that I had on my Kindle so that we could do a buddy read, and at this point of the holiday we still hadn't, and I was like, oh my god, you have to read this, like you have to read this, I need you to read this. And so she did, and she was also very, very shocked and she really enjoyed it as well, which I love when my friend loves the same books as me. There were so many whirlwind plot twists in this, and it threw me for a loop because it had me thinking one thing and I was like, oh my god, what is going on? Like, this is what I believe. And then the next thing I knew, everything that I believed up until that point got thrown out the window and I didn't know what to believe. It's definitely the best psychological thriller that I've read in a while. I don't feel like I read many psychological thrillers now that I think about it. I feel like I mainly just read thrillers or like crime thrillers. So please, if you have any recommendations for a good psychological thriller, please let me know because I'd love to read some more. The only thing that brought a star down for me, because I did rate this 4 stars instead of a 5, is I feel like the ending was way too convenient. I feel like, I know this is fiction, but I don't feel like this kind of ending would slide in the real world. It just didn't feel believable to me. It felt very convenient and I just didn't enjoy that about it. I felt like the ending compared to the rest of the book felt a little flat, and that's why I gave it less of a star than I wanted to. But overall, I really enjoyed it and I can't wait to read the sequel. I'm kind of interested to see how the sequel goes because obviously once you've read the first book, you kind of know how things end, and so you kind of know what is going to happen going into the next book. And so I'm kind of wondering, is there any more secrets to tell? Obviously, I know certain things change in the second book, but it's hard to tell what it's going to be like because obviously this one was very psychological, whereas I don't know whether the next book will be, but it'll be interesting to see. So then the 9th and final book that I read in September was The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This is another short story, which I'm annoyed it took me so long to read because honestly, I feel like if I'd read this in one day, like the other short story I'd read, I would have been able to get in one more book in September, and that just hasn't happened, and it's all thanks to The Vegetarian. So this short story takes place in Korea, and it follows this woman who basically one day decides that she is going to become vegetarian because of these weird dreams that she's been having. And so the story kind of centres around her and her husband, and then also her sister and her sister's husband. I'm sorry, but like the first point in my little review thing that I wrote down was a big old what the fuck. I couldn't understand a thing of this book. I didn't understand the point of this book. I didn't understand a thing. I feel like this book might have made me illiterate. I don't know whether it's because I'm dumb, but genuinely I don't know what point this book was trying to make or what was happening throughout. It felt like I would have understood this more if I was on drugs. Another thing that I wrote down was it all a metaphor? Was there a deeper meaning? I will never know because that went right over my head. It went in one ear and out the other. I did not understand a single thing this book was trying to tell me. It was just strange. And I went on Goodreads to look at some of the reviews after I'd read this, and some people, and I find this interesting, had said that apparently the translation isn't good. Like, people have genuinely said, who obviously can read Hangul, have said that the translation is not good at all, and that the translator who did this book got a lot of hate for translating it the way that she did. So it would be interesting to see if I could, like, you know, read Hangul and Korean, whatever, if it would read better in the original language than it did in English, because honestly this book made literally no sense to me, and I wish it did because it was an interesting concept. This woman was having weird dreams, a lot of things were happening with men around her. It was a fever dream that I would rather forget. If I could take my time and refund it, I would. It was terrible. Honestly, I know I complained about Convenience Store Woman, but this book was something else. Like, genuinely, I would read Convenience Store Woman 10 times over than ever have to come into contact with this book ever again. And if you're wondering how many stars I gave this one, it got a big fat 1 star, because honestly, to give it any more is a tragedy. I mean, good for the people that enjoyed it. I didn't understand a damn thing that was going on. So those were the 9 books that I read in September. If you have read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, please leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of them. Please don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and if you'd like to see more content from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Until the next video, I will see you then, so bye guys.